So far I've talked about the truth, the fact that the early church knew the truth. I've talked about the loss of the truth. I've talked about the restoration of the truth and the fact that the Protestant Reformation was about restoring the truth, and that there's coming a restoration of the truth that has to precede the coming of Jesus Christ. Now what I want to tell you is this is just like that. What happened before is going to happen again. Doesn't really matter. If you were in the early church and you were here today, it would be exactly the same thing happens. Doesn't matter. It's going to happen. If you've been reading the things that I've written, you already know that I go to Isaiah 28 time after time after time, because Isaiah tells it exactly like it is. He put it all together, said this is what's going to be. You're not going to change it. You may think you want it another way. It's going to be this way, so get over it. On that day, his supreme majesty will become a crown of supreme beauty and a beautiful diadem for the remnant of his people on that day. And the spirit of a decision based on the truth for the one who sits regarding the decision based on the truth. And valor for those who turn back the battle at the gate. Who's he talking about? Well, Paul talks about. Our struggle is not against flesh and blood. And if you are not one of those who hears the truth, believes the truth, and keeps those stupid winds out of your head, you are not going to make it. I'm telling you what I know for a fact. Jesus talked about it in the book of Revelation. For the one who triumphs. You can't just battle the winds. You have to defeat them. Now, I want to tell you a secret. Don't tell anybody I told you this secret, because it's a really well-kept secret. The military, they do not teach you how to fight. They teach you how to kill. I've been there. I've done that. I saw what happened. The military is not in the business of teaching people to fight. They're teaching them to kill, because that's the only way you can win. You kill them. So our struggle is not against flesh and blood. You're not supposed to go out killing people. You're supposed to be killing the winds. Now, if those winds are in your head, you had best get them out of your head, because the true believer is called to be a Levite. A Levite. And the Levites that I know about from the scriptures described when Moses came down off the mountain, those Levites did not say, oh, here, let me take you over here and put you in a little cell and you'll be okay. Each one killed his neighbor and his brother. So if you're not in the business of killing the winds that are in your head, the things that you should know are lies, then I suggest you turn around, you back out, you go somewhere else, because you are in for a very, very nasty time listening to what I'm saying. Because the military does not teach you to fight. And you're not supposed to be fighting the winds. You are supposed to be killing the winds, which means when they show up, you start killing. And if you don't recognize it as a wind, it's only because you don't know the truth. And the only reason you don't know the truth is because you don't believe the truth. Because the truth that you know is the truth that you believe. And if what you believe is a lie, yes, those winds will be in your head. And we all act in accordance with what we believe. You've heard me teach these things. Now's the time for you to show up and say, yes, I volunteered for this. I am willing to kill. And what you are killing are all those stupid thoughts that come into your head, telling you this or telling you that. And you should know the truth that will put those things out of your head. But then he talks about those people. He said, but even these were intoxicated by the wine. What wine? The wine of the harlot that is mentioned in the book of Revelation. The mandragora wine. Makes you think all kinds of funny things. And they wandered around because of the liquor. Priest and prophet were intoxicated by the liquor. They were swallowed by the wine. They wandered around on account of the liquor. They were intoxicated by looking. They wavered making a decision. What's he saying? He's saying they didn't know what to believe. They did not know what to believe because all the tables were filled with a vomit of filthiness without a place. What's he saying? They were filled with something that came out of the mouth of an idiot. Some guy who did not know what he was talking about was giving them food for their soul. And what they were eating was vomit. So they were wandering around because of the alcohol that was causing some idiot to vomit up all this nonsense that they were supposed to believe. To whom would he teach knowledge? You see the theme? You see what he's saying? He's talking about what are we supposed to believe? What do we know for a fact? To whom would he teach knowledge? And to whom would he provide an understanding of a message? Those who have been weaned from milk, those too mature for breasts. So if you want to understand the truth, you have to be at least old enough to stop getting your food from your mama. So all those people who read what I write or hear what I say and immediately go trotting off to their pastor, do you think those people are old enough to understand what I say? I don't think so. No. They're depending on someone else to tell them what is truth. They're depending on them to look at it and say, do I believe this? And do you know why they do that? They do that for the same reason that people go into cults. Exactly the same reason. They don't want to be responsible for what they believe. They want someone else to tell them what to believe, so that person is responsible for what they believe. I'm not doing that. I'm saying you are responsible to look at what I teach and determine for yourself, do you believe it? If you don't believe it, I'm telling you, the best recourse, the best action, the best of everything for you is to immediately leave. Get away from me. I'm telling you, I don't want you even around me because you're a detriment not only to yourself, but you're a detriment to everybody around you. And yet they say, oh, he's leading a cult. I know he's leading a cult because I've never heard that teaching before. Oh, really? I thought a cult was where you tried to keep people in instead of sending them away. He says, to whom would I teach knowledge? So why are these people expected to be adults about it? And instead of running off to their little pastor or running off to this person or asking someone else, what do you think about it? They're supposed to be mature enough to make decisions for themselves. And the reason for that is very simple. Because a command refers to a command refers to a command. A line refers to a line refers to a line. And this is a little ditty that he's got. A little bit is here, a little bit is there. And what I'm telling you, if you want to understand the scriptures, that's the gist of it. You got one command here, and you got this command over here, and this refers to that. And you are going to find yourself doing exactly what I did when I saw a vision some 50 years ago. You are going to be going from one passage of Scripture to another passage of Scripture, and you're going to be seeing the link between this passage and that passage. And once I get the app out, you will be able to run a list, and you will be able to see everything that refers to this topic, everything that refers to that topic, and then you'll be able to pull up on the basis of that particular passage or whatever, you'll be able to see what I've said about that passage in everything that I've written. Probably everything I've stated, because I think I'll have a transcript of everything that I've stated, so you can search it as well. But you're going to have to be mature about it, because if you start asking other people, what about this, or what about that, or what about that, I'm sorry, you don't qualify. Because you're not willing to be responsible for what you believe, as opposed to what do you think about this. But a little bit is here and a little bit is there. Because he will speak to this people with a sneering lip and in another tongue, meaning something other than Hebrew. What he said to them, this is the resting place. You must give rest to the weary, and this is the tranquility. But he was not willing to listen. He's saying, if you want to have peace here on earth, you've got to know the truth, you've got to believe the truth, and you've got to use that truth to keep those stupid winds out of your head. And once you get there, it's a very, very, very peaceful place. I know, I've been there. Try to stay there. Do my best to be there at all times. Do I fail? Oh yeah. It's just a matter of fact. Got to go back to the Lord and say, Lord, I screwed up again. But peace? Yeah. There is tranquility beyond what you can imagine. But you know the flip side of that? Isaiah 57, the wicked, those who are guilty, are like the troubled sea. They cannot be quiet. They are zipping, zip, 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 all over the place. So the word of his majesty to them will be, a command refers to a command refers to a command, a line refers to a line refers to a line. A little bit is here, a little bit is there, in order that they walk and stumble backwards and are broken and trapped and captured. Walking in the way. He's not talking physical, he's talking walking in your mind. The way is the truth. You walk in the truth, you'll have peace and tranquility. You let those idiots come into your head and tell you things you have no way of knowing, you won't. It's just the way it is. Therefore, listen to the word of his majesty, you scoffing mortal men who have control over this people who is in Jerusalem. He's talking now to the leaders of the people who are teaching people, the people who are spewing vomit on the tables and expecting other people to believe the things that they say, the things that come out of their mouth as opposed to the word of the Lord. Because you have said, this is what they've said, we have cut a legal agreement with death, the god death. And we have acted in accordance with a vision with the Sea of El. Sea of El, realm of the dead. Death. This is what this people has said. When an overflowing breaker passes over, it will not come to us, because we have turned a lie into our shelter, and we have hidden ourselves in a falsehood. What's a breaker? Part of the sea, right? It's exactly what he's talking about. Part of the sea. It's not going to capture them. No. We got it all covered. We know exactly what's going to happen because we have turned a lie into our shelter and we have hidden ourselves in a falsehood. Now, have I told you from the very beginning of this passage to now, there is a continuity. He is talking about the truth. He is talking about those who understand the truth. He is talking about those who are spewing their stupid lies all over the place. Why? Because they've been drinking wine. And what do people do when they drink wine? And then they start drinking scotch or whatever other drink they want? Yeah, I know, I've been there. There's a shrub in California that knows full well I've been there. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about these people think they know. But what they have actually said is, this death you talk about, it's not going to hurt us. No way. That person that died, they went on to a better place. I know, they're in heaven now and they're looking down on us and they're just so happy. No, that's not the way it is. It's not the way it is. Therefore, this is what my master, his majesty, has said. Look, I am going to lay a stone in Zion, a tested stone, a precious corner of a solidly founded foundation. The one who believes will not make it move quickly. That last line, I don't even know what that means. I don't know if that's a good translation, bad translation. So I'm not talking about the last line. I'm talking about the 2 lines before that. Look, I am going to lay a stone in Zion, a tested stone, a precious corner of a solidly founded foundation. What's he talking about? What is he saying? What is he talking about? I am building a house. Got it? You better remember it, because I'm going to talk about it. This afternoon, I'm going to talk about building a house. I will turn a decision based on the truth into a line, and a declaration of not guilty into a level. What's he saying? This house is going to be perfect. It's not going to be haphazard. You're not going to build it according to whatever whim, wish, whatever you want. No, I'm going to build this house. And I'm going to take this first cornerstone, and I'm going to build this house. Now, if you know anything about building practices in the Old Testament, there was a building practice in the Old Testament, at the time of the Old Testament, in which a person, when you're going to build a new house, you sacrifice your firstborn, and you put him under the cornerstone. Sacrifice your firstborn, put him under the cornerstone, put that first cornerstone in place, and then you build your house. So he says, I'm going to do that. Put that cornerstone in place. Then I'm going to take myself a line, and I'm going to string it out this way, and I'm going to make sure that house is perfect. I'm going to build me a foundation like you would never believe. This is the Lord talking. He's saying, I'm building me a house. You believe lies? I'm sorry. I'm building a house here. Now, what I'm going to tell you this afternoon is the only thing God ever wanted out of this was a house. He wanted a house. Now, the prophets, they love to play with that image, because fools think he's talking about a physical house, and he is. Yep, that's what he's talking about. But when they think house, they're thinking one made of stone, because that's how they built their houses at that time. They built them out of stone. As a matter of fact, you go to Jerusalem today, and you know what you see? Everywhere you look, stone house. They don't build out of wood. Well, maybe they do now. They didn't at the time I was there. But he's saying, hey, I'm going to build me a house. And what is he responding to? Let's go back. Take a look. Because we have turned a lie into our shelter. And we have hidden ourselves in a falsehood. Shelter. Now, you remember Jesus told a parable about the 2 houses? Remember that parable? Matthew 7? Oh, I love that. Because what he's talking about is exactly what's going on here. Because God set out from the very beginning to build himself a house. And because of what Eve did and what Adam continued, he changed his plans a little bit. But he never gave up on what he planned. He just changed the plans. And that's what I'm going to tell you. God has always wanted a house. Now, when did he start wanting his house? Was it at the beginning or was it at the end? Now, you remember there's no time there. So did he at the beginning or did he at the end? Or maybe it's somewhere in between. I'll let you figure that one out. He says, I'm going to lay this stone in Zion. It's going to be this foundation. I will turn a decision based on the truth into a line, a declaration of not guilty into a level. Then hail will sweep away the shelter of a lie, and waters will overflow a hiding place. What's he saying? He's saying, you think you made a covenant with death because you hid in a lie. You thought that lie would protect you. I'm telling you, no. When I get my house built, hail is going to sweep away the shelter of that lie that you believed, and waters, the waters of death, are going to overflow your hiding place. So you want to hide in a lie, you go right ahead. But what I'm telling you is there's a time coming when God has built his house. You don't have one chance in a zillion of surviving. Then your legal agreement with death will be covered up, and your vision with the Sea of L will not stand. When an overflowing breaker passes over, then you will become what is trampled by him. Whenever he passes over, he will take you. He will pass over each and every morning, during the day and during the night, to provide an understanding of a message that is nothing but sheer terror. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend even one night in sheer terror. And God has already placed this place under a curse that demands any person who rejects the truth of the living God or does not know the truth of the living God stands under the same curse that Adam and Eve stood under when he kicked them out of the Garden of Eden. They are under a ban. And this describes what they are facing after God has built his house. Now, if you know what I'm talking about with build a house, then you have some idea of what's ahead for these people. They're not going to enjoy it, but it's going to go on day after day after day after day after day after day. You get the idea? Now, the seventh day, I assume, is where there is no time. So each and every day is what day? Forever. And they're going to be there, and they're going to live in total darkness without one scintilla of opportunity to get out of there. They have been consigned to that. You know why? Because God has a plan. Isaiah talks about the plan in terms of a potter. He explains it because Isaiah explains how God makes a God. Because what God is doing is he's creating himself. See, he left the place where there is no time, and he came down to a place where there is time, and then he created himself. Because if Jesus Christ went back to being God, and we are the members of the body of Christ, then it must be that is like John says, we will know him because we will be like him. It would seem to me that maybe we go back to that time. Let's see, when did we go back to that time? Oh, was it at the beginning or was it at the end? The opportunity that God has offered us is beyond comprehension. But if you screw this up, you will regret it for an eternity. And he's describing that right here. Because the understanding you have then will be nothing but sheer terror. Why? Because for whatever reason, you were too proud, you were too stubborn, you were too whatever to just simply say, you know what? I have heard an amazing thing, and I want to be a part of it. Because the sleeping mat is too short to stretch oneself out, and he bound up the weaving when he wrapped it up. Because his majesty will arise like Mount Perazim. He will be disturbed like a valley in Gibeon. To make what he is making is strange. To do his transportation work. His transportation work is foreign. Transportation work? I translate it that way. I'll probably change it at some point. I don't know. He's talking about this whole thing that Paul talks about. Bearing the body of Christ. You aware of that passage? He's talking about that because we are now the sanctuary of the Spirit of Christ. We are the ones continuing the trek through the realm of the dead until the resurrection. But the transportation work that he talks about is the transportation work of the Levites back in the Pentateuch. Talking about the Levites carrying the Ark of the Covenant, all of the utensils and all the vessels, and all the furniture that's in the sanctuary. You know what I'm talking about? The Kohathites, the Merarites, and whatever the other ites are. But now, you must not scoff, lest your shackles be made stronger. So, if you hear what I'm saying, and you have this overwhelming urge to mock or scoff or do whatever, I'm going to tell you something just so that you have an opportunity to hear the truth. When you hear the truth explained, I suggest, just for your benefit, that you not mock it, that you not scoff at it. You simply turn and walk away and forget you ever heard it. Because what he's saying here is, don't scoff at God. When God does something, when he is explaining things to you that you need to hear, as he is right here, you best not do what Eve did. Just a word to the wise, just letting you know what is. You are dealing with a God who has put up with just about as much as he intends to put up with. He's getting close to his limit. So I suggest you pay attention and don't. That's all I'm saying. Because I have heard from my Master, His Supreme Majesty, a complete end has been decreed over the entire earth. This is Isaiah talking. Now we're talking time and space here. When did God decree a complete end over the entire earth? When do you think he did that? Have any thoughts? Well, he did it at a time that you might not suspect. He did it in the 6th chapter of the book of Genesis, when he said, I am sorry I ever made them. Because it was at that point, and I'm going to explain this to you, it was at that point that God said, okay, I'm done with them. It's over. Because they've already shown me all they want to do is go their own way, think their own thoughts, and have no concern for the truth. So I'm done with them. Now that's not what you're going to hear in the church. It's not what you're going to hear outside of right here. But I'm telling you the truth. It was at the flood that God said, it's over. I'm done with it. I'm tired of dealing with these people. Everything from here to the end, when I put an end to it all, it's all about building my house. 6th chapter of the book of Genesis is where God said, okay, we're going to build a house. It's going to be a house for me. You want to be a part of it? You go right ahead, because I'm done with it. I'm sorry I ever made them. Because he had a plan for Adam and Eve. They screwed it up. He had a plan for Adam and Eve after they came out of the garden. They screwed it up. And he said, I'm done with them. So you come along now thinking that you are some high and mighty individual, that you can't be humble enough to accept the favor that he offers you. You think that you are somehow, some way better than everybody else? No. He was done with you a very long time ago. He said it's over. It's done with. So let me show you what John says. John 12. Jesus told them, the light is going to be among you a short span of time more. He's talking about himself. As long as you have the light, walk so that darkness cannot grasp you. The one who is walking around in the darkness is not even aware of where he's going. Walking, not talking physical, he's talking mental. Where are you walking mentally? Where are you mentally? Most people aren't walking. They're not walking. Why? Because to walk, you have to think coherently. You have to walk from one logical conclusion to the next logical conclusion to the next. No, they're not walking. The prophets say, no, they're chaff. They're being blown by the wind. They're floating on the wind. They're going from one stupid fantasy to the next. And God says, no, I don't want you floating on the winds. Keep the winds out of your head. Go from one rational thought to the next. Think through things logically before you act. Preaching to me here. That's what he's saying. That's what he's talking about. And he's saying they're walking in darkness. What's darkness? It's not the light. The light is the truth. These people are walking in stupid notions, one right after the other. As long as you have the light, Believe God's promise about the light so that you become sons of light. Jesus said these things, and after going away, he hid from them. Even then, after he had done so many signs in front of them, they did not believe God's promise about him, so that the word of Isaiah the prophet, what he said, would be fulfilled. And now he's going to tell you what he said. Your Majesty, who has believed the news we have, and to whom has the arm of his majesty been revealed? For this reason, they could not believe God's promise, because Isaiah said again, he blinded their eyes and turned their heart to stone, so that they would not see with their eyes and understand with their heart and turn around and I would heal them. Do you understand the significance of what he just said? He said God blinded their eyes. Now, I don't know about you, but if I heard that message for the first time and I understood the significance of what he just said, and I did not understand the truth or I was not accepting the truth, it would cause me a little bit concern because God did it to me. He blinded their eyes. Please don't think that everybody here is truly born again. They aren't. They have not a clue. Some of them are outright rejecting everything I say. Some of them. Others think they believe because they think they believe. Kierkegaard. Thinking you believe because you think you believe, in my dictionary, is a classic definition of hope. It's not belief, it's hope. I hope I will be saved because I hope I will be saved is the same as I believe I will be saved because I believe I will be saved. So what I'm telling you is this passage that John put in here should be terrifying to those who don't believe. 2 Corinthians 4, 1 through 6. For this reason, just as we have been shown mercy, we who have this service do not get discouraged. If you have been born again, and you know you have been born again, you have been shown mercy. Why? Because you were willing to go to God humbly confessing that you couldn't do it yourself, there was no way you could do it yourself, that you wanted what he had to offer, but you realized you had to rely on him as opposed to yourself. Now, the person who is humble enough to go to the Lord can receive mercy. But the person who goes wanting something for the Lord, no, that's not the way it works. You want to feel better about yourself? I'm sorry, go to a psychiatrist. He'll help you feel better about yourself. He's trained to do that. You want to get out from under the conviction of the Holy Spirit? Then you go to the Lord. He convicts you, he makes you feel really bad, extremely bad. And then you can go to him and you can say, Lord, I'm sorry. I know I'm a sinner. I know that I've heard the truth. I understand the basics. I've got to get right with you. I've got to agree to do the right thing from here on. I've got to make a firm commitment, one that I'm not going to go back on, not trying to get out of. If that's where you are, then yeah, you can go, you qualify. As Paul says, you will be shown mercy. But we who are not walking in dishonesty, nor counterfeiting the word of the living God, but commending ourselves to every man's conscience in sight of the living God by our disclosure of the truth, have renounced their shameful secrets. So even if the good news of the fulfillment of the promise we have is covered, it is covered in those who are being done away with. What is he saying? He's saying they can't understand the truth. Why? Because God blinded their eyes. The same way that Pharaoh, he says God hardened his heart. It's the same thing with them. They're not going to believe no matter what. Jesus Christ himself could appear in the middle of the room and they would assume that it was some magic thing that you did. They'd have an excuse for it. Why? Because they don't want to believe. But what I'm telling you is you need to be aware that those are around and they're going to try to influence you. So you stand alone, you believe what you believe, you are responsible for what you believe. You be an individual. Don't be a mama's boy. Those in whom the God of this current age has blinded the thoughts of those who do not believe God's promise, so that they cannot distinctly see the illumination of the good news of the fulfillment of the promise of the glory of the Anointed One, who is the image of the living God. Here's my point. I told you earlier, when I start explaining things in the book of Genesis, you have to look at those things from a specific perspective before you can see. God has given you eyes to see if you've been born again. And you can see what I'm talking about. And as a result of that, you will understand what Moses was all about when he talked about Jesus Christ. He had it all planned out. He knew exactly what he was going to present. For we do not preach ourselves, but only His Majesty Jesus, the Anointed One, and then ourselves as your slaves for Jesus. Because the living God, who said a light will shine out of nether darkness, is the one who has shone in our hearts with an illumination of the knowledge of the truth concerning the glory of the living God on the face of Jesus, the Anointed One. He's saying you have light. Light is truth. Truth allows you to see what's going on around you down here. It allows you to see this place for the ridiculous place it is. You will see things going on down here that will become much more repugnant to you because of what you understand. It will change your perception of this reality. You will be able to see because you have the light, because the light is shining in the darkness of this realm, because this is the realm of the dead. This afternoon, I'm going to talk about the things that Moses wrote. So I want to give you a heads up concerning what I'm going to explain. Moses had a very structured statement that he was making in the first 9 chapters. And if you don't understand that statement, you're not going to understand God's plan. Because God set out from the very first, from the very beginning, to build a house. To build a house. That's what he planned to do all along. He was going to build himself a house in which he could live. And if you are a member of that house, God will live in you and through you for all eternity. You will, in essence, be a member of the house of God, the household of God. You'll be a member of the family of God. You will be a child of God forever. You will be like God. He set out from the very beginning to do that. Eve screwed up the first plan that he had. So what did he do? Well, he did what Isaiah said. Like a potter, he went down and he took some clay. Now, everybody should know that a potter uses clay. But the potter, he goes and he gets himself some clay and he mixes it all up real nice to the consistency, because he's a potter, he knows these things. And he forms it into whatever he wants it to be. It could be a jug, back in the day, biblical times. It could be a lamp. Now, Paul talks about this in Romans. He talks about God as being a potter, and he forms whatever he wants. He talks about the different vessels in God's house. Isaiah talks about this. Making a God. How do you make a God? Jeremiah talks about it too. And they're talking about the same thing. Because they're talking about God, the potter, making a God. Do you hear what I just said? You see, God did the impossible. He did it. Do you hear me say that? He already did it. But how did he do it? Well, we're in the process of finding out how he did it. Because what he's saying is, you have the opportunity to be exactly like God. You can be a member of the house of God. You can be a child of God. Right now, you're just a fetus in the womb of the harlot. But when you're resurrected, you'll be born as a child of God. Paul talks about it in Romans 8. You will be a full-fledged child of God, just like God himself. But there's no time there, right? So when did that happen? I don't know. Can't understand it. Because here in time, God is in the process of building a house for himself. But like a potter, he came down here and he took some clay. Adam, Eve, bad. Does the clay have the right to tell the potter, why did you make me like this? Well, that's what Adam and Eve did. They were clay, dirt, but a special type of dirt, clay. The potter was forming the clay, getting ready to burn it. Oh, wait a minute. Whoa, what in the world? Man, that's one big kiln, isn't it? We're headed right for it. We got the clay. We're going to fire that sucker up and make ourselves a vessel worthy of the house of God. Have you read those passages, Paul? Right? That's what he's talking about. Because the potter has the right. Isaiah told me this. I didn't know this. But the potter has the right to take that lump of clay. If it doesn't turn out, got an imperfection of some sort, what does he do? He just stops the pottery wheel. He takes that sucker, puts it back in there some way, does whatever he needs, gets a little more water and puts a little more whatever with it, and he starts over. We see that's what God did. Adam and Eve, they were being made into the image and likeness of God, but they screwed that up so royally. And that's why Paul says what he says about Eve. Eve sinned first. And I've told you what the significance of that is. She did not have to entice Adam to sin, but she did. And it's in Genesis chapter 6 that God said, you know what? I'm done with this. I am going to start over. And I am going to reform this clay that I was making into my image and likeness. I am going to start over. I'm going to collapse all this stuff down to its basics. I'm going to put it on the pottery wheel, and I'm going to start that sucker going, and I'm going to work my magic, and I'm going to make a vessel that is worthy of the house of God. That's what Paul has in mind. But the potter has the right to decide when and where he will start over. And that's what God did. So all these people who are so high and mighty today thinking, oh boy, they think that their God is going to bail them out. That's not true. Because Paul says very clearly, quoting Jeremiah, that when they are at their zenith, they think they've got it all under control. That's when disaster is going to strike them. It's going to come on them in a blink of an eye. And those who know the truth are going to know exactly what's happening, and they won't have a clue because they don't believe. They won't believe. They refuse to believe. But what God has done, He is going to take the remnants of the first Adam, and He's going to remake them. Remake that clay into His image and likeness. He's going to make a God. He's going to do the impossible. That is, He's going to make something that was never eternal, and it will be eternal. I don't get that, but that's the message of the Scriptures, the children of God. A nation will be born in a day, and He will take the remnants of that clay, Adam, and He's going to reform it. He's in the process right here, reforming it into His own image and likeness. And when He fires that sucker, we're all going to be in the image and likeness of God. But it's going to take fire to do that. If you want to be a part of that, I suggest you take very seriously the things that I'm telling you today. Because when all is said and done, it's not going to happen on its own. You are the one who makes the decision every day as to what you believe. You are the one who decides. You can't blame your circumstances. You can't blame someone else. You are the one that God expects to be individually responsible for who you are, for what you believe, and what you do.